You still wear that cheap suit? My sister smirked before the meeting. 10 minutes later, when my business was announced as the new parent company, she spilled her latte all over herself. It was the kind of day you could only dream of in Chicago, clouds hanging heavy in the sky, the wind sharp enough to bite, but everyone still hustling through the streets, barely noticing the shift in the weather. I'd spent the morning in the car, running through my pitch over and over in my head. I had worked for this. My small tech company, which I'd spent years building, was on the brink of something massive. We were on the cusp of merging with a huge corporation, something that would catapult my company to the next level. But of course, my sister was there too. Lena had always been the favorite in the family. The one with the looks, the charisma, and the wealth. She didn't have to work nearly as hard for her success, it was handed to her on a silver platter. As for me, I built everything from the ground up. My company wasn't just a job, it was my life, my pride, my blood, sweat, and tears. I arrived at the conference room early, just to get myself centered. It was a large, polished space on the top floor of a building that seemed to touch the clouds. I loved it. The clean lines, the quiet hum of anticipation in the air, the feeling of power that comes with a room full of people who understand the stakes. I put my things down, sat at the large boardroom table, and started going over my notes. The slides were ready. The team was prepared. This was going to be my moment. My company was going to be the one they chose to merge with, not my sister's. That's what I told myself as I adjusted my collar, straightened my blouse, and mentally went through the presentation for the 10th time. It wasn't long before Lena walked in, looking exactly as she always did, perfectly put together, flawless makeup, an expensive coat hanging from her shoulders like it had been tailored by angels. And the smirk. That smirk that told me she thought she was better than me. Always. She spotted me immediately and, of course, walked straight up to my table. Her heels clicked against the floor like she owned the place, and for a second, it felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Still wearing that cheap suit? She asked, leaning in just a little too close, her eyes flicking up and down my outfit like I was some kind of joke. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Lena was the kind of person who lived for moments like this, when she could remind me how much further ahead she was, how much more successful she was, how much more she had. I tried to push it out of my mind. Focus, I told myself. This wasn't about her. This was about my company, my future. I hadn't come this far to let her throw me off track. The rest of the room started to fill with executives and colleagues. There were murmurs as people shuffled in, but I could barely hear them over the pounding of my heart. I didn't need to look at Lena anymore. I knew she was watching me, waiting for me to flinch, to back down. The CEO of the larger company we were merging with, Mr. Hartwell, stood at the front of the room and greeted everyone. I've known him for months now. We'd been in talks for what felt like forever, negotiating terms and going through the process. But this was it. Today was the day we would finally make it official. Good morning, everyone, Mr. Hartwell started, his voice low and steady. We're here today to finalize a major partnership between our company and one of the top tech firms in the market. We're excited to see this merger through and begin the process of integrating the teams. I couldn't help but glance at Lena, who was sitting across from me. She had that look on her face, this calm, assured expression like she knew something I didn't. But the truth was, I knew everything I needed to know. I had worked for this moment. I had built everything myself. I gave my presentation. I kept it simple but precise, explaining how my company's software solutions would help streamline their operations, how it would open up new markets, how this was a win-win for everyone involved. My voice was steady, and I knew the information backwards and forwards. I had done my homework. As I spoke, I could feel Lena's eyes on me, like a weight on my shoulders. But I ignored her. I kept my focus on the people around me, on the future of my business. They were paying attention. I could tell. They were nodding along, exchanging glances, flipping through the materials I'd handed out earlier. Things were going exactly as planned. Then, the moment I'd been dreading came. Mr. Hartwell cleared his throat and turned to the group with a slight smile. I'm pleased to announce that, after careful consideration, we've decided to go in a different direction than initially planned. We're excited to move forward with a merger with Lena's company. I could feel the blood drain from my face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister, Lena, had been selected, not me. She was the one they had chosen. The room was filled with murmurs of approval. Some of the executives were congratulating Lena, patting her on the back. And I felt like I was being swallowed by the floor beneath me. All that work, all that effort, for nothing. The deal I thought was mine was gone in an instant. But Lena, ever the professional, smiled through it. Her confidence never wavered, even for a second. She was the one they were investing in, not me. She had done it again. She had taken everything. My heart was racing in my chest. I felt like I was choking on the words I wanted to say, but I couldn't. What could I say? There was nothing left to say. The meeting continued on around me, but I was no longer a part of it. The deal was sealed, and I was on the outside, watching it unfold. I could hear Lena's voice, calm, almost smug, as she spoke to Mr. Hartwell about the next steps. Her success, her effortless beauty, her ability to always get what she wanted. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead, I sat in silence. But then, something happened. Lena, ever the picture of composure, had a latte in her hand. Of course, she did. And just as she took a sip, I stood up. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe it was the years of resentment building up. Maybe it was because I couldn't stand her smugness anymore. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because I had nothing left to lose. Without thinking, I knocked her latte out of her hand. The coffee spilled all over her white blouse, the one she had clearly spent hundreds of dollars on. It splashed across the table and onto the expensive fabric, staining it. Lena froze. Her mouth opened in shock, her eyes wide, and for a split second, I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Was it surprise? Was it anger? Or was it something else, vulnerability? I couldn't tell. But for once, I felt like I had done something right. Oops, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Guess you won't be wearing that expensive blouse anymore. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked down at the stain, her face going red with embarrassment. It was strange. She wasn't the one who usually looked embarrassed. I was always the one feeling small next to her. But now? Now it was her turn. Lena stood there, her face flushed with humiliation. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out what to do next. Her hand hovered over the stained fabric, almost as if she wasn't sure how to react. But the arrogance, the smugness, was gone. For the first time in as long as I could remember, Lena looked vulnerable. She wasn't the queen of the room anymore. She was just a woman standing there, soaked in coffee, trying to save face. The room fell into an awkward silence. I could hear the low murmur of voices around me, whispers that I couldn't quite make out. Some of the executives looked on with raised eyebrows, unsure whether to step in or pretend nothing had happened. Others seemed to stifle chuckles, though no one dared to laugh openly. But all of them were watching. Everyone was watching. Lena didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her lips pressed tightly together, her usual composure cracking at the edges. It was almost surreal. The woman who had spent so many years making me feel small, making me feel invisible, was now standing in front of me, looking like she didn't know what to do with herself. Finally, she spoke, her voice a bit shakier than usual. "You're unbelievable," she said, her words clipped. But there was a tremor in her voice, a slight crack in her usually confident demeanor. I could feel the bitterness rising in my throat. I had spent so many years letting her tear me down, letting her think she could take whatever she wanted from me, whether it was opportunities, accolades, or even the approval of our parents. I was tired of it. I was tired of being the invisible one in the background, always living in her shadow. You've always been unbelievable, I replied quietly. But you know what? I'm done. I've been done for a while, actually. Lena's eyes flickered, and for a moment, I thought she might say something cutting, something to put me back in my place. But she didn't. She just stood there, staring at me as the seconds ticked by in uncomfortable silence. Everything I've done for you, everything I've built, and you do this? She asked, her voice now low and edged with anger. This is how you repay me? It was almost laughable. There it was again, the same old script. Lena, always the victim, always the martyr. Never once acknowledging the years of passive-aggressive comments, the subtle jabs, the way she always found a way to one-up me. Always being the one who got the spotlight, the praise, the admiration. You've never done anything for me, Lena, I said, my voice rising just a bit. You've only ever made me feel like I'm not good enough. You've made me feel small, like I'm not worthy of even being in the same room as you. You've made me feel like I don't belong. She blinked, and for a second, I thought she might be hearing me for the first time. But then she straightened her shoulders, her usual defensive wall coming back up. You're overreacting, she snapped, brushing a lock of hair from her face. I don't know what your problem is. But this? This stunt you just pulled? You've gone too far. I couldn't believe it. Even in this moment, where I had every right to feel victorious, she was still trying to spin it back on me. As if I was the one at fault. I could feel the familiar anger rise up in me, but I swallowed it down. No more. This was my moment. For once, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself. Maybe I've gone too far, I said, my voice now calm but firm. But I'm done trying to live up to your standards, Lena. I'm done being your little sister who you can push around and make feel inferior. I'm not that person anymore. She didn't say anything to that. Instead, she just turned away, muttering something under her breath. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. I watched her as she walked away, but I didn't chase after her. I didn't apologize. I didn't do anything to try and make it right. This time, I wasn't going to be the one to back down. I had made my point, and for once, I felt like I had the upper hand. As the meeting continued, I found it hard to concentrate. My thoughts kept drifting back to the look on Lena's face. She had been so sure of herself, so confident in her victory. But for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. And that, for me, was enough. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The merger was officially announced, and the deals were sealed. My company would now be part of a larger corporation, but it wasn't the way I had imagined it would happen. It was a bitter pill to swallow. But I wasn't going to let that ruin the moment. I stayed for the post-meeting discussions, though my head wasn't fully in it anymore. It was hard to focus on the business details when all I could think about was the confrontation with Lena. Still, I knew I had made the right decision. She had always been the one to take the spotlight, the one to get all the attention. But in that moment, for once, the spotlight was on me. Lena wasn't the only one who had something to prove. The days that followed were strange. I'd expected to feel some kind of satisfaction after everything that had happened, but instead, I found myself feeling a mixture of confusion and uncertainty. I wasn't sure what I had hoped to achieve by confronting Lena in front of everyone. Was it revenge? Satisfaction? Validation? I didn't know. All I knew was that it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For once, I wasn't trying to measure up to her. I wasn't playing her game anymore. But there were consequences, of course. Lena didn't speak to me after that day. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't try to reach out in any way. She simply vanished from my life again, as if I no longer existed. And yet, I didn't mind. For the first time in a long time, I was okay with being on my own. The weeks that followed were quiet, at least on the surface. The merger went through smoothly, as it always does when there's money involved, and the business side of things took off as I had hoped. My company, now part of the larger corporation, was thriving. But it wasn't just the business success that kept me up at night, it was the aftermath of what happened with Lena. At first, I found myself thinking about her more than I should have. Was she angry? Was she still holding on to her grudge? Was I going to lose my entire family over that one moment? It was a ridiculous amount of worry considering what had transpired, but I couldn't help it. We hadn't spoken since that day in the boardroom. Lena and I had always been at odds, but there had been a time, years ago, when I thought we could at least try to be close. That dream died long ago, but the remnants of it lingered in my mind, like a memory that wouldn't fade. The way she acted, though, so cold and unapproachable now, made it clear that any hope of reconciliation was long gone. But something happened as the months went on that made me realize just how far Lena was willing to go to keep herself in the spotlight, and how far I had come in stepping out of her shadow. It all started with a phone call, one I almost didn't take. It was from our mother. Her voice was warm but strained when she greeted me. "Sweetheart, it's been a while. I'm sure you're busy with all the new changes at work," she said, trying to sound casual. But I could tell she had something on her mind. "Hi, Mom." "Yeah, things have been crazy around here," I replied, not really sure what this was about. "What's up?" "Well, I've been talking to Lena lately," she said, her voice quieter now. She's not doing well. I mean, she's putting on a brave face, but I think you might want to know what's been happening." I could hear the hesitation in her tone. For a moment, I thought she was going to ask me to reach out, to make things right. To be the bigger person. But instead, she continued. "Lena's business is falling apart. The merger, well, things aren't going the way she expected. She's stressed, and honestly, I think she's starting to crack. I'm worried about her." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Was I supposed to feel sympathy? After everything that had happened? After years of being belittled, treated like the lesser sister? My gut instinct was to say I didn't care. But something in me told me to hold back, to listen. "Lena doesn't handle failure well," I said quietly, more to myself than to my mother. "No," my mom replied, her voice soft but filled with concern. "She doesn't. But she's reaching out to people now. She's acting different. She's been calling me, asking about you. About how you managed to keep your head together through all this." There was a long pause. My thoughts raced, but I didn't speak. What did she expect me to say? What did I even feel about this? "She's asking for your help," my mom said, almost as if she were pleading. "She's finally realized that maybe, just maybe, she needs to stop trying to be perfect all the time." That caught me off guard. Lena, asking for help? Asking me for help? It didn't make sense. The woman who always saw me as a competition, the woman who had always belittled my hard work, suddenly needed me? "I don't know if I'm the right person to help her, Mom," I said after a long pause. "I've given up on trying to please her. She's always had everything handed to her. I'm not sure I can be the one to save her now." My mom was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. "I know, sweetheart. I don't expect you to fix everything. But if you can at least give her a chance, maybe just listen. She needs you right now." That was it. That was the moment I realized just how much Lena had fallen from the pedestal she'd placed herself on all these years. I didn't need to rush in and fix things. I didn't need to be the one to save her. But what I could do, what I was going to do, was give her a taste of her own medicine. Just a little bit of the reality she had spent so many years ignoring. A week later, I decided to meet with Lena. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I couldn't just show up with the intention of making peace. I had my boundaries, and they were set in stone now. If Lena wanted my help, she would have to earn it, earn my trust, earn the respect that she had never truly given me. The meeting was set at a small cafe in the outskirts of the city, far from the corporate boardrooms and the glass towers that dominated our lives. It felt more neutral, more grounded. I didn't want this to be another one of her power plays where she showed up looking perfect and composed while I sat across from her, intimidated and unsure. When I arrived, Lena was already there. She looked different, more tired, her makeup less polished, her posture slumped slightly. She wasn't the woman who walked into a room with an air of invincibility. No, this was someone who was finally showing cracks in her armor. She looked up when I sat down, and for the first time, she didn't give me that condescending look. Instead, she just stared at me, almost as if she were waiting for me to speak. "How's business?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. It was a question that felt almost too formal, too distant, but I wasn't going to pretend like I cared about the trivial stuff. She looked at me, eyes tired, but there was something in them that was different now, vulnerable, human. "It's not great," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I worked for, it's falling apart. I've been so busy trying to outdo everyone that I didn't even see how bad things had gotten. Now, I don't know what to do." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I studied her, watching her for a long moment. She looked like she was about to break down, and I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't the untouchable, invincible Lena anymore. She was just a woman who had been broken by her own pursuit of perfection. Finally, I spoke. "You never saw me, did you?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. "You never saw the years of work I put in, the sacrifices, the compromises I made just to keep my head above water. And now you're sitting here, looking for my help, because you're realizing that you can't always be the center of attention." Her eyes filled with something, a mixture of guilt, regret, and maybe even shame. But it wasn't enough to change the dynamic. "Lena," I said softly, "I'm not here to fix you. But I'll tell you this, you won't get anywhere by thinking you're always above everyone else. Not anymore." She didn't say anything. But when I stood up to leave, she didn't try to stop me. Instead, she just nodded. Weeks passed after that meeting, and the changes were gradual. Lena didn't come crawling back for help, at least not in the way I expected. Instead, she started to make her own decisions, struggling, stumbling, but trying to rebuild what she could. The reality of her situation was hard to face, but she had to. I didn't reach out to her again, and eventually, the bitterness faded. She wasn't the enemy anymore. And as for me? I wasn't just the lesser sister anymore, either. In a way, I had won, not through grand gestures or cruelty, but through the quiet satisfaction of standing my ground. I had let her fall, but I hadn't pushed her. She had done that to herself.